Hello and welcome to episode 7 of From the Be All End. Before we get going, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for tuning in last week in record numbers. Our transfer special with Sasha Tavieri saw us fly up the charts into the top 25 of all football, or soccer if you prefer, podcasts in the UK. Also, thanks to the many new followers who joined us on Twitter. We have a lot of plans for this podcast for when the season gets closer and even more for when the action actually begins in August. But there's still plenty to talk about with the new kit, never-ending transfer rumours, and all the friendly matches. So, let's get stuck in. So, before we get into the transfer news, and we have a surprise mini guest for you on that front, let's just quickly talk about the new Burnley kit that came out this week. Justin, you're back from the capital of fashion and our aesthetics expert. What do you make of it?
I think the only word to use to describe it is a bit disappointing, isn't it? I mean, the club is usually pretty good at playing sort of homage to the past. I think they do a really good job with that sort of thing. But and they've said, haven't they, that this kit is based on this 1994 shirt, but I can't see it at all. I just think it's a bit of a weak effort. It's a missed opportunity. I do wonder if my sort of dislike of it is based on the fact that it's got that sponsor on the front, because there's no way I'm paying money to walk around with that logo on my shirt. And I don't see why they don't offer a version of it without the logo on, without the sponsor's logo. I'd definitely pay more for it, and I'm sure a lot of other people would. Apart from that, it's bit of a
Claret shirt with blue sleeves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a real hard no on the blue shorts and the Claret socks. That I'm not having that. That is not traditional, is it? It's got to be white shorts and Claret and blue hoop socks, hasn't it?
I do love the hoop socks. Yeah, I mean, Greavesy, what's your thoughts on it? I mean, I feel similar to Justin. Really, it's a bit. I don't think we're going to remember the 23-24 season kit, are we?
No, and that's the thing, isn't it? I think I have now seen. I think the pictures. What I would say that I think the launch pictures look great in terms of the exploding dust and things like that. So there's a real aesthetics to that. I really like that, and I think there is a kind of a pattern within the jersey which gives it a little bit of added something. And I think when I've seen the picture of JJ Watt holding the shirts up, the colour is kind of like the 93, 94
It is
Wembley
different than how it looks on the promo stuff, isn't it?
And but it's just, for me, it's a missed opportunity. I mean, Umbro have had that kind of tapering, that trim, using the Umbro diamond, which they could have had on the collar, could have had it on the end of the sleeves, and that to me would have just gone, that's 93, 94. That's what I was expecting. That's the thing you remember about 93, 94, which is probably one of my favourite shirts. And it just looks like a missed opportunity. We know Umbro can do it because Everton had the diamonds on the edge of the sleeves a couple of years ago. So they could have easily done it. As it is, and I agree with Justin, that logo, and even the kids' logo, would have been better. I'd have happily had a Dude Perfect. I'm sure we'll come on to Dude Perfect at some point. The Dude Perfect sign on the front of the kit, rather than that it just makes us look like Villa. And the shirt looks like an off the peg. You're logging on to Umbro /custom shirts for your pub team on a Sunday. That's the template. It just looks a lazy effort from my point of view. When Umbro actually, I think, have produced some really nice kits for us. And I don't know where the breakdown's been, but for me, it's nah. And I think we were spoiled a bit by last year's being so bloody good. But yeah, I just think it's a tad disappointing, or whatever Justin used, a bit of a disappointment. Yeah, for me, all the build-up, signing up for the bloody email to then not get the email. There's a lot of people didn't get. I didn't sign up. Chris got the email, of course.
What was the point of that?
Well, it's marketing. It's a well-trodden marketing path, I got told. Like, I'd never been involved in marketing or journalism or anything on that score, but listen, there'll be lots of fans of it. I think in the flesh it's going to look better. That bloody W, though. Oh,
yeah,
just ruins it. We did a version, didn't we, on his Twitter feed without the W. We got rid of the W, and it looks instantly a better kit. I would happily walk round, as Justin said, having paid an extra £5 or a £10 for that shirt.
They have actually put
logo.
they have put some pictures out with the players wearing a version of it without the logo, that sponsor's logo on.
Have they? I wonder if that then means that there's going to be a version without it. I don't know. It does look good.
Bournemouth and West Ham, yeah. Bournemouth and West Ham are putting out sponsorless. They're both Umbro. So there may be the possibility.
It can be done.
I tell you what would be a compromise? What would be a compromise? And it seems to be, back in the day, if you remember Ensley, the logo was like a gold, yellow gold colour, Ensley's logo. But if it was on a Burnley shirt, it was white on claret. It was claret on yellow. It was claret on blue, and so on and so forth. That would be a compromise to me if you had the entire logo in white. I don't know where we've gone with these sponsors now, where they have to have their
colour scheme on it.
Put their entire logo on, colours and all. Like, you look at the Chevrolet one at Manchester United, it's absolutely appalling. But if you go back in the day and you had sharp electronics there, or you just used the colour, the opposite to what the home strip was or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, talking, you were interesting. You're saying about like past Umbro kits and stuff, and how they missed a trick there. And you're right about them Everton sleeves. But I did think yesterday, and I thought I went and had a look at some of our previous kits, and of course, the first Umbro kit that I can really remember. I mean, the V was an Umbro kit, wasn't it? But they were a bit more discreet in those days, weren't they? The Umbros and the Adidas, they didn't have all their branding throughout the whole thing. But I remember I think it'd be about 78, 79, 80 sort of period. There was an Umbro shirt, silky shorts, everyone called them. They did have like, and it was a very sort of shiny sort of material. You remember it with the diamonds down the sleeves and everything. That, like, I think probably who would have been in that team? Well, Peter Noble would have still been around, I think, possibly. No, but Martin Dobson, when he came back, wore that kit, I think. I'm
thinking I can see Stevie Kindon in that shirt.
Yeah, you're right. Kindon, when he re-signed, would have worn that shirt, wouldn't he? With his chest rippling out the front of it. But
it was like a V-neck, wasn't it?
That would have been a really nice retro shirt to do with the diamonds down the sleeves and stuff. But yeah, I suppose we have to wait for the away kit, really. I mean, I was thinking now that I don't have to pretend to be objective walking around England and stuff, that I can wear a Burnley shirt over here, and it's not like, what kind of journalist wears a team shirt sort of thing. But I'm not going to buy this one. I'll wait and see what the away kit looks like. I don't know. Has there been any clues about the away kit, what it might be?
No, I've not seen out. I presume we'll have a white one and a blue one, I presume, but I don't know. I'm waiting for I'm a right type bastard. I'm waiting for last season's home shirt to be lower than 40 quid. I mean, they made a big thing of the kit sale up to 75% off. Get the shorts for about 750. The home shirt, bearing in mind that the new one is available from Saturday, it's still 40 quid, as is the third kit. And I like both of them. If I get them both for 40 quid, if Alan Pace is listening, if he could do me a deal, 2 for 40 quid, one home, one third kit, I'll take.
Get the drill tops back in as well.
Get the drill top. We were talking about that, weren't we? The drill tops are just incredible.
The retro Umbro drill tops.
Yeah, there's a Mitre one at the minute for 150 quid on eBay. And now I've said that on the podcast, there's no way I'll be able to get it, because my wife will know if I walk around the house in a Mitre drill top, it's cost me 150 notes. So, but yeah, Umbro drill tops, that's what we want.
What are we saying? What are we saying about the badge not being the sort of single colour badge on the shirts? That's a bit of a surprise, isn't it?
After all that,
feel a bit daft now, getting really annoyed about it.
Tradition. Well, it is a tradition. It should be the club badge, and it is.
I wonder if the delay was because they've changed it back to the original badge. I don't know. I'm being a bit facetious there.
I think they put it on the shorts as well, just to make us look even more foolish.
Yeah. It'll be on the dugouts. It'll be on the. It'll be everywhere. We'll arrive at Turf Moor for the City game, and there'll be none of this monochrome badge anymore. But yeah, I think
the TV channels. It's been sent out all to all the TV companies. So
I do think the jersey's a bit of a grower. I kind of like it slightly more now than I did yesterday when it first launched. I'll probably have a wander down to the turf and have a look at it on Saturday, just to have a look at it in the flesh. But
the other thing to say about it as well is I think shirts tend to be more popular if we've had a good season, don't they? We remember the ones that we've played well in. So that's why the 91 night, the one that Greavesy is modelling now, that's why we remember that so fondly, because that was such a great season. And similarly with the last season as well, because when we do well, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Multi-part still gives me shivers when I see multi-part.
But that template that Greaves is what I mean. If you look back, you remember like Norwich winning in Munich with their version, and Coventry had a version, didn't they? And it was all they really sort of, I don't know, they pull on the heartstrings, I suppose, of all those clubs. It's just the 90s was a really sort of wild time for design, and it's good to see some clubs are sort of. Really look at the England training shirt for Russia 2018, which should have been the home England shirt. It was like a sort of a version of the old 82 strip, with a very modern slant on it, but they didn't quite have the nerve to make it. I'd like to see a bit more invention along those lines, really. But
I'd like to see Pony coming back in. Do you remember the Pony kits? West Ham, Southampton, Coventry, with a Pony V. I'd love to see Pony kits back in. But there we go.
I didn't realise this because having known of Pony for 40 years, but is it product of New York or something like that? I never knew that.
I didn't either. That's incredible.
No. There you go. The things you learn on from the Be-All. Yeah. Right. Enough about kids. Let's move on to what we're all interested in. Transfer news. So, plenty of business to talk about in the transfer market. No further developments on James Trafford's move to Turf Moor. One presumes that things are going to plan. But we all got to have a sneak preview of what we can expect from the young keeper in England's triumph over Spain in the Euro Under-21 finals. And what a performance from Jimmy Trafford it was. Who saw that? Did we all see it, or anyone just see the highlights? Or I think we've all seen the saves, haven't we?
Yeah, just saw I kind of caught the last little bit, really. Probably his best part of it, really. But I think we were kind of scratching his heads about paying 15 million quid for a goalkeeper who'd never played above League One. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if he listens to the podcast. I presume he does. Most people do, given last week's figures. Such confidence as well. I think he said after the game that, I told someone this morning I was going to save a penalty. And apparently Cole Palmer, who's also been linked with a move to Burnley, by the way, there's footage, I think, of him on the bench when the penalty gets given saying he's going to save this. And it's a brilliant double save, isn't it? I mean, he's got the kind of the foresight to, he's made a save, get back up, make yourself big, and he sweeps it away with his foot. And again, 15 million quid for a goalkeeper that's still never played above League One level. Record breaking at the Under-21 Euros, didn't concede a single goal, looked good in the bits when he was kind of called upon. And most of the time, England were breezing through those games, but there were always moments where he had to keep switched on. And that's what really impressed me, that confidence. Dan Barnes talked last week about this confidence, not coming from a place of arrogance, but genuine belief that he has all the tools in his toolkit. And, once we get it over the line, I'm saying it like that because I believe it probably is that. I think there's just been a delay on the medical and tying things up because of his time off and England commitments and things. I think he'll be a superb signing.
Yeah, the second part of the save for me was the best bit. I mean, goalkeepers do save penalties. It was a bloody good save to keep out the kick, but like you say, to react so quickly and get in right position and be alert and the reflexes and everything. Top class. Yeah, Boards, did you see it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was, apart from the fact that it wasn't a penalty to begin with, it was not all contact is a penalty. I just thought it was a farcical decision. And but again, I'm just listening to sort of little snippets of his teammates and, he sounds like he's developed, obviously, if there's any young lad will, but he's developed into this real strong personality and character. And agrees, you mentioned that, the arrogance where I think people look at, you look at the belief Dean Henderson had at Manchester United, and a lot of people seem to criticise him for having that faith in his own ability, and it seems to go against him. But Trafford seems to, he's just got that sort of presence. You felt like it, having not seen an awful lot of him, but you just felt like he was going to make something happen at that moment. And to say the second save, absolutely superb. And let's say Taylor Harwood-Bellis was on 5 Live yesterday morning. They played a clip of him after the game where he said he's the best goalkeeper I've ever played with. And he backtracked slightly in a live interview, but he just said, the lad's got absolutely everything to be, a top level, talent for years to come. And I've not seen anything to suggest he won't.
I think he's going to be tested a little bit more in the Premier League than he was in that tournament. But I think, and that double save, as incredible as it is, it's just a moment, isn't it? I think what's more important is, like everyone else has said, the things that the people closest to him have been saying about him, about his temperament. There doesn't seem to be any doubt whatsoever in everybody's mind that he's going to be a top keeper and that he probably will be England's number one at some point. I mean, we talk a lot, don't we, with transfers about risk, and £15 million rising to 19 million seems like a big risk, doesn't it? But judging from what people are saying about him, it's about as close to a no-risk transfer as you could possibly come up with. And it immediately starts playing for us in the Premier League if things go as they should go, if what people say about him is correct. He's worth more than we pay for him as soon as he starts a game. So it all looks, that's sort of thing I do on Football Manager, by the England under-21 goalkeeper. So I'm all for it.
It was funny on social media how many people, like within minutes of him saving that penalty, were like, worth every penny. Last week we're all, how much? But that's football fandom for you, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, there's been no developments on that front. No further arrivals at all into Turf Moor. But there's one deal that appears to have been called off at the last minute. The France youth international Soumaïla Coulibaly's proposed move from Borussia Dortmund, which was also a big money one that we talked about last week, possibly a 15 million mandatory buy clause next year, which effectively means you're buying him for 15 million, you're just not paying it until next year. Apparently that move is off. The news was broken by Twitter's transfer scoop maestro, Fabrizio Romano, and we asked him for the background on what went wrong.
My understanding is that the deal between Burnley and Borussia Dortmund for Soumaïla Coulibaly is now off, and at the moment all parties involved don't see any chance to revive the move. Never say never in the transfer window, but at the moment the deal is off and there are no fresh contacts today to make it happen. What happened is that the player already had first part of his medical at Burnley. Everything was in place between the two clubs on a loan deal with a mandatory buy clause for summer 2024. So everything was almost ready. Then when was the moment to exchange the contracts and the documents, they found some problems in the agreement for the mandatory clause. So they started to discuss again the terms of the clause, and there was no agreement on some crucial details to make it happen on permanent transfer in summer 2024. This is why the deal collapsed, and now the expectation is for Soumaïla Coulibaly to obviously return to Borussia Dortmund and assess his options for the future.
So there you go, Fabrizio Romano giving us the details there on what went wrong with the Coulibaly deal. And nice of him to do that. Very kind of him. And I think, the interesting thing there is, something went wrong in the mandatory part of it. It's not an option to buy. It's a mandatory purchase a year later. I'm wondering if it's not a sort of Weghorst type clause or something related to us going down. Possibly, if we went down, would we be able to get out of the deal or some way? I mean, if Burnley are sort of balking at it because of that, you would think it's some get-out clause that we wanted to have in there where we could back away from it. I don't know. I'm guessing at that. Chris, what do you make of that one?
That's the only thing that would sort of make any sense, really. But let's say the similar-ish situation with Jordan, with Jordan Bayer last summer, where there was the option there. They sort of acted on the option not long after the end of the season. But if this one's mandatory, as you say, you want to cover your bases. We don't know how much football he's likely to have this season. What is he going to break into the centre-back pairing or potentially a three if Vincent surprises us and goes down that route. But Yeah, you wonder when things like that break down. You wonder, is there something in the medical? But as I say, it's all come out about this, the mandatory clause. I note he's only 19. He's had a cruciate ligament injury already at Dortmund. It certainly sounds. I mean, it's not one to doubt his Vincent's scouting network. But he sounds like he's been likened to Upper Meccano at Bayern Munich, who is a super player. Quick player. He's got that left foot for that balance, like with Bayer, and all signs point to him being an astute signing. But maybe that one will come out in the wash. Not sure.
Well, as I was saying about James Trafford, that being a no risk sort of deal, this one to me always seemed like a real risky deal from the start. And I was a bit confused about this idea that we buy him to pay for him next summer rather than paying for him now before he's. I think that's just a really odd way of doing business. You don't know what sort of a season he's going to have. You don't know whether he's going to fit into the squad. You don't know whether he's going to, blossom or fade in the Premier League. You don't even know how many games he's going to play. So to agree to pay, I mean, if it's true that we had agreed to pay 15 million for him, it just seems a bit of a risky way of going about your business, doesn't it?
It does, but it does raise the question now: if we felt the need to have another centre half in the squad, do we, Greavesy, do we go back to Manchester City and say that lad we had on loan last year, we will sign him for you for 15 million or whatever the fee might be?
I do wonder whether that has played some part in the kind of thinking, because as Fab said there, everything was in place. It sounds like they had the agreement, and then the contract is sent over for checking, and suddenly there's something either party doesn't quite like in that. Whether we'd kind of had an agreement that the price would be based on number of appearances, would be based on surviving. Because I think Leeds had a similar deal for, is it Weston McKennie? I think when he came on loan, I think that was a kind of £30 million buy clause, and I think that was pretty much set in stone. But obviously on relegation, that no longer became the wasn't activated, or Leeds could get out of it. So I do wonder if there's a bit of that. I'm not sure if it'd be based on relegation. I get the impression that whilst companies not talking about finishing 17th, I think there's a confidence there that we wouldn't, we're not thinking about relegation. We're not setting up to finish 17th, which I think puts you in a weird place when it comes to expectation and kind of, what's going to happen. But I just wonder whether the kind of news becoming public, if you will, that City are willing to listen to offers of roughly the same price for Taylor Harwood-Bellis, whether we've got one eye on that as a potential deal as well. I don't know. I think, Chris has mentioned it a few times. I think we were all in agreement that is a no-brainer. He is going to be somebody, a bit like Justin said with James Trafford. You buying 15 million, you're going to get at least your investment back. We've seen Wolves do likewise with Nathan Collins. That does, he does feel like less of an investment risk. Whereas this guy, 2 first-team appearances and 19 appearances in the German third tier, the scouts and the data must suggest he was worth going for. I just wonder now if, as Sasha mentioned last week, that plate was just stopped and taken off its pole, and we've just decided to kind of back out of that deal for whatever reason.
Yeah, it was interesting reading some of the German newspaper coverage on it. That in Dortmund, the local papers there, their reaction was like, wow, this money's come in. Well, Dortmund not going to say no to this one. Like, he's only played a game, and it was like, they couldn't believe it almost. It's the tone of it was very much like, these English fools have like come in to buy our reserve centre half for 15 million. But it did seem a really risky one. I agree with Justin on that. It just, and I don't know on the relegation one. It doesn't mean you don't have ambition. If the financial people, are they not going to turn around and say, hold on a minute, you're committing us to spending 15 million, which is still for Burnley a big amount of money, isn't it, in our transfer budget? We're going to do that whatever happens. Like
Yeah,
whether
exactly.
So I think it's a potentially dodged bullet. Is that one? One that's still ongoing, and great friend of our podcast, Sasha Tavolieri, reporting today that Burnley have bid 15 million euros for Metz's Georgian international striker Georgi Mikhautadze. That's really bad pronunciation, but it's the best I can do. That 15 million bid has been turned down by the French club, but he's saying that they're waiting for an offer of around 20 million, which usually means that you can get there somewhere in the middle, maybe. Are we going to bite the bullet and spend 18 million on him? Chris, you see him as a potential one?
Again, it depends. I see we've not got access to the budget. Obviously, there's still lingering talk of Teller, potentially
Right.
again for sort of ballpark figures. Now, are we calling Teller a forward option or a wide option? It depends. But sounds like the Burnley have competition from Lazio for Mikhautadze and. To play as a backup to Immobile, so he might not even start. So that's maybe where Burnley can hold the aces if they can sort of say, "Listen, come to us, and you're playing the Premier League week in, week out, pretty much." But a
lot of stories that Immobile might be leaving Lazio. Actually,
yeah, they've lost a couple, haven't they? This summer, I believe. So they're obviously in that market. But, apparently, he's a Lyon lad, and his dream would be to play for Lyon, but I don't know whether they'll come calling or not. But we've all seen the figures. It's not just goals; it's assists with Mikhautadze, and had a little look at him playing for Georgia against Scotland the other week, and in the farcical game that was stopped and restarted with the weather. So he's got something. He's one of those sort of ice cold killers, if you will. I think. I very much like him. I think in the Premier League, you need that sort of clinical edge. You need someone who's going to snap up the chances that you do create. And he looks like that type.
Somebody compared him to Danny Ings. I don't know. Does he look that sort of player?
Well, it's one of those. He's got that bit of ability as well. So it's you can probably see where that comes from, but. Maybe to me, it looks like he'd score more goals than a Danny Ings. I think Ings he had good seasons in terms of goals, but I think over his career, I don't think you'd call him prolific. But we're looking at that ballpark figure, aren't we? If he's 22, if you're going to spend that sort of money on him, you're likely to make money on him. You'd suggest.
I always think there's got to be something in stories, though, when it's somebody who last window we were linked with as well. And, that does seem like he's somebody that we've tracked, although, of course, that was the case with Verbruggen as well, wasn't it? But it's no guarantee.
We had our fingers wrapped, yeah. We had our knuckles wrapped for asking Vincent Kompany about Mikhautadze. It was the week I finished last year, and the club were, why have you asked about him, sort of thing. Well, it's because his name is linked in the national media at the weekend. It's every right to ask the question. But, as you say, so it's obviously one who's been on the list, and he's had one of those seasons where his value's probably gone up threefold.
Greavesy, I mean, there is always that thing about, you start thinking, well, if we do go and spend 18 or 20 on him, does that mean we're not signing Teller? I'd be really disappointed if next season we start without Teller in the side. I think that'd be a major to lose Teller and Maatsen from last year's team would and possibly Harwood Bellis as well would be disappointing. Really, I think at the end of last season we all sort of assumed that the first item of business would be to get our best loan players signed up for the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we probably got our best loan player, didn't we, in Bayer? I think, signed up nice and quick, and that was obviously done before the season. But yeah, I think, Mikhautadze, I think, was the one that I'd kind of really hoped we would get in because, we talked about his figures last year. I think the season before he was in Belgium in the top flight, and I think he got 19 goals in 21 games or something ridiculous. It's kind of like 2 seasons at, probably roughly the same level, probably lower end championship, mid championship level. But I think from his point of view, as Chris was saying, he's this kind of stone cold killer. He looks like, from a running at defenders, from a breaking beyond defenders, 1-on-1. He looks to have, all the attributes that you think about in terms of would they fit into the Premier League. And that's the thing for me. But like you say, there's a lot of these 15 million quids adding up, isn't there? 15 million for Elwood Bellis, 15 million for Teller. This is the price. I mean, they must just, Alan Pace must ring them up, and the opposing chairman just goes, "Yeah, all right, Alan, 15 million." It's crazy, isn't it? But that seems to be the going rate for where we are. And I'm glad it's at that level rather than at the 25, 28, 30 million, which, a lot of teams slightly further up the pecking order do get quoted for players of roughly the same stature.
They're saying they're linked with again with Che Adams at Southampton, and the price again being quoted is 15 million, which I would find absolutely astronomical. Obviously, it's Sean Dyche and Everton have been linked with him. There was interest in him. It's going back. It was in January, about 2.5 years ago or so. I can remember his agent was Clive Platt, who used to play at Rochdale, turn of the millennium. But I always thought he's one of those, man. I think he's very limited, Adams. He's quick, he's physical, but don't score anywhere near enough goals. And that sounds like one that's being regurgitated to try and get him a move out of the Championship, to be honest.
Well, Dash seems to be going back for a few. I mean, Ashley Young was a player he tried to sign for Burnley, and if he goes for Che Adams, that's another one. And talking of players who signed for Dash's Burnley and have uncertain transfer futures, this week, Wout Weghorst was back at Gawthorpe. I don't know what to make of this one at all. I mean, he's obviously upset a lot of people around the club, the fans, whether that's fair or not. That's certainly the impression. But there he is, little social media video back at Gawthorpe. Justin, what is your reaction to seeing Weghorst back in the fold?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that video was really strange, wasn't it? It showed him sort of walking into the training ground, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. And when they asked him, what he was looking forward to most, he thought about it for about 30 seconds and then said, being successful for Burnley, which seems, I mean, putting out that video is an odd thing for the club to do in the first place, I think. And that response is an odd thing to say, isn't it? It's kind of, does that mean that he's, definitely coming back or what? I mean, I find it very, very hard to believe that he hasn't burnt the bridges and there's any possibility of him coming back. I see the response to the video was mostly negative, but there were a few people there who sort of were I'd quite like to have him back. And I think my thinking on it is that he's got a lot to prove, hasn't he? He's got a point to prove. He's got a lot of things that he's said and done in the past that he needs to put right. And his spell at Manchester United has only reinforced the fact that he's not a proven Premier League striker, which I think he thinks he is, which kind of makes me sort of come round to the conclusion that he'd be much more dangerous playing for us than he would be playing for somebody else, because he's got a lot of ground to make up. I mean, and also we have to get somebody in that position, don't we? Why? He's on a contract. We've signed him. We don't have to pay for him. I sort of think he could do a decent job for us in that sort of number 10 role that United played him in, like the pressing and the holding the ball up and popping it off out wide to our wingers. And I see everybody else shaking their head, so I'm probably in a minority of one here. But I woun't mind if he came back, and it would be a great story, wouldn't it, for him to score a hat-trick at Old Trafford for us next season?
Was it the Wolves game the Wolves game where the most number of pressing actions or something, how they described it in the Premier League stats that season. So as you say, his work rate, you couldn't be knocked. And we all remember how he combined with Jay Rodriguez for the goal against United, and his ability to drop deep and make it stick, bring others into play. He can carry the ball as well from deep as well, and get you up the pitch. But ultimately, it's roughly 5 goals in 50 Premier League games, and not the most mobile players. He's a real paradox for me. You look at what he did in 15 minutes in the World Cup against the eventual champions, and then you look at him at other times, you're thinking, my word, he's absolutely hopeless. And his record in a good league in Germany was respectable. Van Gaal obviously thinks a lot of him. Ultimately, the proof's going to be in the pudding. And you would imagine he's going to train and be available until otherwise. Someone else comes in if there's another Turkish club shows interest. But for me, if that's the case, they have to show us the money. I'm afraid I don't want him going out on another year and leaving the club in
15 million. 15 million. Greaves, are you joining this love-in for Wout Weghorst?
No, I'm not having it. It's his attitude for me. I'm just, I find him such a strange character. The video was just hilarious. It made my teeth itch. That's how bad it was. When there was the pause, and it's just, they've clearly said they've not ambushed him as he's getting out of his car. Clearly, there's the bit of a setup where they go, "Oh, I'm going through the training ground doors, and here's Weghorst." So they obviously
anyone's run after Weghorst. I think.
They've obviously said to him, "Look, when you come in, we're going to film you." Blah blah blah. There's a bit of an awkward conversation about his haircut, which I actually quite like. Slightly jealous of it, and it's kind of like, what you're hoping to achieve, what you're most looking forward to. Just say meeting Vinny and the boys, seeing the boys again. And there's a really awkward bit where he's thinking, just say something. Being a success here, and you just think, nah, not for me. I think he's an absolute car horse, if I'm being really honest. I just think he is. I think he's useless. And I've seen enough of him at United, so a lot of his games at United. So pretty much every game he played for Burnley. And United aside, and 1 or 2 other appearances, when he started getting knocked and Jackson dropped him or subbed him, his true colours came out. We know he's a difficult character. It's one of the reasons, by all accounts, that we were the only place who'd have him. Right, nobody in La Liga would have him and things like that. And I think, there's obviously vaccine and COVID connotations there. But for me, no, his attitude it doesn't look right. You look at them videos. I mean, we do a lot of these videos. Everyone does these videos. Stand outside training ground, here are the players coming back. And there's a genuine kind of like buzz about it. The club have put out a new video actually tonight of training, and, Zarori comes out in Mancini's goalie gloves and looks like he's taking on being a goalie and things like that. There's a bit of a laugh and things like that. And then it cuts to Weghorst sat in the canteen with Brownie. Brownhill's got the short straw sitting next to him. And then there's some training footage where he just looks out of place. He looks like he's, he looks a bit knackered, if I'm honest, which is probably
why are they putting these videos out?
I know, honestly.
Are they testing the water to see what the sort of fans?
But look at the figures it's had. Look at the figures it's had.
Yeah,
it's like 4.5 million views or something.
Yeah,
so that's why they've put it out.
Yeah,
it's
there, isn't it?
Do you not think it's exacerbated by his running with Connor Roberts, though? Do you not think if he'd have faded away, we've got relegated, and he's, listen, Louis wants me to play top-level European football to go to the World Cup. And, the club of Burnley had said, if we got relegated, I could do that. I think nobody would have batted an eyelid. But when Connor Roberts turned around and says, why didn't you do that for us, when he scored in the Nations League against Wales?
Yeah, suggest there's some sort of friction in the squad there, doesn't it?
Exactly. But most of those have gone now, haven't they?
Apparently,
I was going to say,
he's wearing the number
13
shirt. Apparently.
He has to sort of he has to sort of make up with the squad, they were saying. half of them aren't there anymore anyway,
No.
so he'd probably walk in and not recognise anybody.
I mean, if Pace has said, look, I spent 12 million quid on this guy, he's under contract for another 2 years with us. We've got to make the best of this. Vincent, can you integrate him in the team? And he went, well, it could be an impact sub, give us something different. Yeah. I mean, managers, like, as much as they say they want to be responsible for clubs' finances, aren't going to kick out international footballers out the door unless they've fallen out with them themselves. And the company was nowhere near the club when all that stuff happened.
He's not going to be here. He's not going to be here come the City game. I'll tell you that right now. He will not be in this. They've given him squad number 13 by all accounts. I've just seen that. Someone's just pointed that out to me. He will not be in. He will not be here. He'll be by Leverkusen. He'll be back in Turkey. I tell you, this is the agreed date for him to come back into training. And Vinny's the ultimate professional. He will give him a chance. You look at kind of all the questions he was asked last year about Weghorst, and it was all like, I've not spoke to him, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I don't think Pace is turning around and saying I spent 12 million. I think it's probably a red line for company. If company wants him and company comes out and says he's worked hard in training, we want to give him a chance, that's fine for me. But he's not going to be here. I tell you that right now. I'd be very, very surprised if he's still here.
And if he does say that, if we do end up in that scenario, and I agree with you, Greavesy, I think that is unlikely. But if we do end up in that situation, they've got to do another video where he sits down and explains all that, and he can joke about the Connor Roberts thing if he wants. They can handle it however they want. They have to do some PR with the fans and say, like, because you don't want him being booed when he comes on the field in the first game or something. And there is a slight danger that I'm not saying the whole turf would boo him, but you can imagine there would be some sections of the crowd if he came on as a sub, especially if they took off Benson or something and brought on Weghorst, or, some unpopular substitution. You could see that happening. You've got to get out ahead of that. But they haven't done that. Certainly not this bizarre video. They haven't done. So I tend to think you're right. I don't see him fitting in.
So you can question the standard. I mean, Turkish football's it's a higher standard. The Super League's a higher standard than the Championship. If you put your Galatasarays and Fenerbahçes, etc., Besiktas up against most Championship sides, they'd probably beat them. Look at Burnley's games with Başakşehir the other year, and it was a tough tie. But you do wonder, like, for the sake of 3 months, what Van Gaal saying, you have to play top level European football. Yeah, see, if he's sharp and scoring goals at Championship level, would it have made that much difference to Van Gaal, who wasn't going to start Weghorst in his World Cup side anyway?
No,
it's one of them. We'll see. Well, the telltale sign will be if Burnley playing friendly games and Wout's got an injury.
Yeah.
And he's not featuring. Yeah.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens with that. Friendly games. Talking of friendly games, the rather meagre pre-season program for Burnley has been boosted by the addition of a friendly on July 28th against Real Betis, which is an attractive one. Not at their stadium, but at the home of Recreativo del Hueva in Andalusia. Anyone going to be packing the sun lotion for that one?
It's quite a nice one, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
More attractive than
Genk. Yeah, with Pellegrini obviously coming in. Pellegrini coming into the equation with a bit of a reunion with Vincent, where they won the Premier League together. But I just find it. I've joked for years on end that pre-season should be played behind closed doors, and now when it pretty much is, and you're getting not much information, for a journalist, it drove me mad last summer, because you're doing all the previews and things. You speak to whatever magazine or radio before the season. They say, "Well, how Burnley looked in pre-season?" You're like, not a clue.
No
Saw them
idea.
at Shrewsbury where they played 2 separate sides. Now the goalkeeper will play, and I know absolutely nothing about it. It was a real tough one. With the amount of players that came through the door as well, you're not certain how they were going to line up, systems, who's looked good in pre-season, etc. From a journalistic point of view, it's a nightmare, but it worked. The pre-season worked last year. They hit the ground. They couldn't have started the season, in terms of the first game, so any better in terms of the performance. But
I have to say that's a plus point for Alan Pace, just to throw in a rare plus point from my point of view on Alan Pace. A lot of clubs use pre-season for money spinning tours, don't they? I mean, over here in the States now, we've got Arsenal coming out, we've got Manchester United, AC, all the big, the big six type clubs and the big clubs in Europe. Well, Wrexham are out here as well. Yeah, that's a bizarre one. But so you have these big clubs come over, and I know from like talking to people, they don't really like it. The players don't. The coaches in particular don't like it. Mourinho used to hate it when they go over to America, and as much as he liked America, being in America and stuff, he wanted to be on the training ground, putting down the basics, doing the drills and all that kind of stuff. He didn't want to be like meeting and greeting 100,000 people in Michigan or whatever. He wanted to be on the training ground, really. So I don't think pre-season, and it would have been tempting for Pace to take Burnley off to some money-spinning series of friendlies, and it seems like we've gone with the manager on that one, which, although we'd all love to see them more, I think it's probably a positive.
Well, Company talks a lot, doesn't he, about getting them on the training ground. He talks about doing the drills. He talks about getting those routines in their head so they don't have to think about it. And you can't do that in games, can you? You've got to do that on the training ground. And he's talked a lot about how getting back early over the summer has been really valuable to him, to get with the younger players and get them involved. So I've never seen pre-season be like a sort of pointer to how good we're going to be in the season. It never works that way, does it? Because these games don't really count. All they are is getting kilometers in the legs, aren't they? They're just sort of getting people fit. It's not about, because we're never playing against the same kind of opposition as we face in the league. Certainly not this season coming. So more time on the training ground is probably what Company wants, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've seen both sides of the coin, really. I've seen the sort of the sheer logistic hard work it is to get, abroad. Even going with Burnley, going with Steve Cotterill to Austria and Italy, and lugging the skips and all the equipment that's got to go out there. Getting on flights. So I can remember getting on a flight from Stansted at like 2 a.m. or something with the first team squad after they played a friendly at Turf Moor, and just like everyone getting to Austria and it being absolutely exhausted and this, that, and the other. But what the time they had in Austria, the drills that Steve put together, they worked so hard, and that was the sort of the first summer he was here. You could see how he'd sort of organised that defence that went on to concede around just under a goal a game in the Championship that season. Yeah. So you can get both sides of it done, but I can see Mourinho being fed up with America's a different kettle of fish altogether, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, talking of America, we have a couple of ex-Clarets over here in Major League Soccer, with Ashley Westwood having been joined by Scott Arfield at Charlotte. And Scott Arfield was talking to the media this week, and Charlotte have kindly provided us with some of the audio from that, where Scott talks about Ashley Westwood's role in his move to the United States, and also a little bit about a possible return to international football for him, even at his ripe old age.
In terms of Ashley, it was very pivotal on this transition for me on and off the pitch. Even before I came here, I think the GM and the manager sort of leaned on him to talk about me as a player and a person. So obviously me sat at this seat, he's done okay for me, because he's obviously said the right things, and hopefully I can back it up and on and off the pitch. I'm here to represent this football club, and I feel as if I can do it in a good way. No, I've always said, at that time it was such a difficult decision for me, because I was captain at that team at that time. The players that then went to the World Cup was just sort of start to come through into fruition. The sort of the standards and the team ethic that we had back then was what you've seen at the World Cup this year. So it was a difficult decision, but as I said, I was desperate. I was desperate to win the league for Rangers, and the travelling did take its toll at that time. There's no doubt about it. Coming back on Thursday nights and having to play 12:30, and sometimes in AstroTurf, sometimes in Old Firm games, and you know, that they're difficult to play. Everybody thinks it's easy to play at Rangers and Celtic. It's no. It's definitely no. You need to be a certain player and a certain calibre of person to really get going. So it was a bit of adjustment. But now I'm here. I'm always open. You know, I've still got an amazing friendship with most of the players there. And the manager, I've got full respect, and we've got a fantastic relationship. So you never say never in life. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then I'm extremely lucky to do so anyway.
So, guys, it's good to see Scott Arfield extending his career like that, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting for Burnley fans as well in North America to have a team every week where you sort of look to see, you know, how did Westwood and Scott Arfield get on? I know the Burnley supporters group, North American Clarets, were going to have like their annual meetup in Charlotte so that they could then in the evening after watching the Burnley game go and watch. It was Charlotte DC United was going to be the game, but unfortunately the morning game we were going to watch in the pub together, Burnley Forest I think it was, has been moved by TV to a Monday night game, so it's no longer going to happen. Unfortunately, they are looking for something else to do, but it's an interesting one. I mean, he's such a popular player, isn't he, Greaves? Scott Arfield. It always will be remembered very fondly, I think, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. You know, I think, you know, we often think about MLS as being that kind of retirement ground. And I think that's unfair these days. I think, you know, when he first started, 98, you had a lot of players going out there to see out kind of the last couple of years, their contracts and things like that. But actually, you know, I think it's a really interesting league. I think, you know, it's got some good players. Obviously, there's a little known Argentinian who's going to arrive in your neck of the woods sometime soon. And I'm sure, you know, the fact that He arrived this week. I'm sure in his press conference he'll talk about Ashley Westwood's pull to MLS. But it's great to see them two back together, and it's great to see them doing well. I mean, you think about that injury that Westy picked up against West Ham, I think it was. You know, that looked like you're thinking he might not come back from this, you know, at his age and things. So seeing him prolong his career, he found top bins a few weeks ago with a real strike. You know, I've always loved Scott Arfield. I think the move to Rangers and the success he had there, playing European football, winning trophies, you know, that's kind of what he deserved. Because if you think about it, I think he was all set to sign for a club in League Two, weren't he, just before he signed for us? So, you know, that trajectory, his spell with us, the goal against Rovers, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think it's brilliant to see him kind of still at a really competitive level for a really competitive team.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of him coming back into the international setup's an interesting one as well. I mean, Boards, I mean, could we see Scotty Arfield in the 2026 World Cup? It's a long way off, I know, 3 years, but if he's extending his career in MLS and he gets back into the Canada team, he left the Canada team because of the travel to and fro for playing CONCACAF games while he was in Scotland, and now he's saying, well, you know, I'm in North America now, so...
Why not? I really enjoyed watching Canada in Qatar as well, and it must be nice to play alongside someone like Alphonso Davies every few months. But it's mad to think, isn't it? It's like 10 years since he got released by Huddersfield Town, and there was the famous tweet, "I'm on the dole now," and he pitched up in pre-season on trial and did ever so well, and. Even after signing a contract, if you remember, he made a Rick against Blackburn where Jordan Rhodes scored officially the raggiest goal of all time to equalise at the turf, but bounced back the next game and had a stormer against Birmingham, and just such a clever footballer. And if he'd have had any pace whatsoever, would have been an absolutely outstanding Premier League player. But every credit for someone who couldn't get in the side when Burnley got into the Europa League, to then go to Rangers and boss it and get to a Europa League final, and win the SPL, and just under a series of managers. It weren't just like one manager. He played under 2 or 3 up there, and more often than not was one of the first choice picks. And I loved him to bits. Just a real chipper guy, really good about the group, and I wish him every success. Him and West. It's be great to see him do well.
Yeah, last game of the season, the regular season in MLS is Charlotte versus Inter Miami, and Inter Miami are miles at the bottom of the Eastern Conference at the moment, but the presumption is that when Messi and Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba arrive next week, that they might start to do a bit better. As ludicrous situation as it is.
Is Iniesta going as well? Isn't there?
There was rumours about. I don't know about that one. There's a limit with the designated player rule, but who knows? But basically, it could be feasibly that Messi's chances of making the playoffs and extending his season into November, December, which MLS will be desperate for him to do for like viewing figures and all that kind of stuff, could come down to whether or not Inter Miami and Lionel Messi and Busquets can get the better of Ashley Westwood and Scott Arfield on AstroTurf in Charlotte. So it's a fascinating one. I mean, Justin, what do you make of it all? This late career flourish.
I have to say, I've got no interest whatsoever in American football. It's on at the wrong time of the day for me. But obviously, now these big names like Westwood, like Arfield, like the other fella you mentioned, now these big names are coming into the game. It might well be that I'm going to have to start picking up an interest in it. And that sounds like a fascinating end to the season to me.
It does. That'd be a good one for the North American Clarets to go to. Except the tickets will be about $500 each to get into that game because it's gone mad with Messi. Anyway, enough of all that. I don't know how we've ended up talking about Lionel Messi on a Burnley podcast, but we have. You never know what you're going to get when you tune into From the Be-All End. You get Fabrizio Romano, Sasha Tavolieri, and unfortunately, we didn't have Woody this week. We should have said hello to Woody, but. Anyway, that's it. We're out of time, but we will be back with more next week. In the meantime, of course, you can follow us on @Beehole Podcast on Twitter, where there's lots of content going up there and lots of things we comment on during the week. You can also give us some feedback, questions, anything you want us to talk about next week. Subscribe and review us, please, as well on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and those little review slots. It does help other people find us. And we'll speak to you again soon. All the best.